the Natural Capital Advisor for local land services in the Northern Tablelands, and a big part of my role is to help farmers be able to understand and be better equipped to engage in these emerging natural capital markets. First of all, I think we need to make sure people understand what is meant by the term natural capital, and it is simply everything that's in the natural world around us. So it's your plants, your animals, microbial life, fungal life, water resources, soils, rocks, and the air and the atmosphere. It's everything, so it is a general term, and it is really fundamental to our well-being as humans, but it's also really essential to the well-being of other life. So really important to highlight that agriculture is underpinned by natural capital. Natural capital is fundamental to how we grow things, but obviously we do things to optimise yields. That depends on what we're growing and where we're growing, how we do that. But that has to be balanced with sustaining the underlying natural capital or natural resource base, and that's the job of every farmer and sustainable agriculture advisors to make sure that we get that balance right. Natural capital is fundamental to agriculture, but it is also relevant to biodiversity, looking after our water resources, and for a lot of aspects that relate to climate mitigation and adaptation, whether that's at a global scale or a local scale. We can reframe what we've referred to as natural resource management. So natural capital is a reframing of that. Where your natural resources are in good condition, your natural capital is high. And that then means that the nature around us can provide a whole lot of services and functions to us for free. They're called ecosystem services, and some ecosystem services that people will probably be able to understand easily are things like shade and shelter, buffering of climate extremes, facilitating good water quality, pollination, pest control, things like that. Biodiversity, that we value for so many reasons, that's not an ecosystem service itself, but it is fundamental and it supports a whole range of ecosystem services. For a farm where you look after your natural capital, you've generally got a lot of resilience in your system, but at the same time you're providing a whole lot of environmental services to the broader society. So the markets that are emerging are about paying farmers and land managers for those environmental services in addition to the production of food and fibre. The environmental markets or natural capital markets that are emerging are about farmers being paid for those environmental services that they provide. When I use the term markets, it is markets in the broader sense. So it is about those, what you would call a credit market, where maybe you generate a unit of, say, carbon or protect an area of biodiversity and you're paid to do that. It's also about market access and sustainability credentials. So certain markets will be asking for a certain level of responsibility in relation to natural capital management. It's also about banks wanting to offer lower risk finance. And another thing that it's about is where someone wants to pay for the use of your land or a part of your land for a non-agricultural purpose. So there are absolutely opportunities in this world, but I also want to acknowledge that there are also challenges. In many cases, it can be about land use competition, but there are also a lot of win-wins in this. If we take a step back, what we've done as a society is paid farmers for food production for obvious reasons. So that is really important. We've done a great job with that, and we can't forget that that is absolutely essential. We've still got a growing population, but we also at the same time have other challenges relating to climate for one, but also biodiversity. There's a biodiversity crisis, biodiversity challenges, we need to protect that. And I get that people have differing views on that. But a lot of this is out of our control. There's stuff happening at a really high level. So governments, even at an international level, intergovernmental agreements, even down to state governments, national governments, etc. But we've also got corporations and significant large supply chains and corporations who are signing up to treaties and setting targets because they are required to be transparent about their impact on climate and nature and then do stuff about it. While it is kind of complex, It's also freeing up a lot of financial capital that can flow down to the ground level, hopefully, to actually undertake projects that are about climate and nature repair. So what we're seeing is really a shift in the large-scale financial models from one that is primarily or predominantly about extracting from nature to one that we need to continue to extract to some extent, but we also have to invest in nature repair. So it's a new model. We're not familiar with it. We're used to governments and not-for-profits funding nature protection and nature repair, but this is quite a big change and it's not something that we're familiar with, so we need to understand it. The challenge we have is, even though there's dollars becoming available for nature repair, etc., the challenge we have is actually getting this down to the ground level where it benefits individual farm businesses and rural and regional communities. A big part of my job is, first of all, having an understanding of what is happening and what those drivers are at that higher level. Then figuring out exactly what are the market opportunities that are viable, and then stepping down a little bit further to look at individual situations to figure out what would work for people in the context of their business structure. This is an emerging space, but there are already markets available. People will be familiar with the idea of a carbon credit. So that is where you are paid for sequestering, which means drawing down a unit of carbon into either soils or vegetation. That's a viable functional market, and there are a lot of people that are engaging in that. It can, if done in the right way, have a lot of co-benefits, and it can be a win-win for a farm. So in New South Wales, we have the Biodiversity Conservation Trust, which will pay you as a land manager or farmer to protect areas of high conservation value. There are various ways you can do that, and you can use that in your marketing to say you're doing that and you're protecting nature and biodiversity if that works for your business structure. We also have in New South Wales a biodiversity offsetting scheme. So that is where developers are impacting a certain vegetation type or different species, and they are looking to offset that impact. So that's not going to be for everyone, but that is another viable market that we currently have. There are a couple of others that are available. There are methods on the table, but it's still early days. So in Australia, we have a government market called the nature repair market, and that's about generating a biodiversity credit. And then we also have a few non-government markets that are about also generating a biodiversity credit, and they are associated with the accounting for nature framework and the methods with that. So it is early days for those markets. People have entered projects and registered projects, but there are a few things that we still are not sure about with those that we need to have more certainty around before that becomes really viable for your average farm business. There are also other methods constantly in the pipeline being developed. It is a case of just knowing about this stuff a little bit, not to be alarmed, just to be a bit aware and know that there's somewhere to go for information. Another aspect of these markets that is functional now and getting increasingly so is that banks are looking to reward people for good management of natural capital alongside obviously financial resilience, and often the two are connected, and they are wanting to offer lower interest finance to that kind of business. The reason they're doing that is because they want to de-risk their own business, but they also have signed up to those treaties and targets that I mentioned before in a lot of cases. And the other aspect, there is uncertainty and it's new, are various sustainability credentials. So a couple that people will probably have heard of is this requirement to report your emissions numbers for some supply chains, and also this move towards deforestation-free produce. So they're in flux, those markets at the moment. They're developing, and I guess I can help people understand what are the drivers behind them and whether or not it's likely to be relevant to their business. Knowing that there's stuff that I don't know yet or that no one really knows yet, there is uncertainty in this space. So that when your I think it's clear it's an emerging space, there is complexity, but there really are opportunities for people. And if we get it right, then it means that it will lead to healthy, productive and more biodiverse landscapes, and that is going to benefit all of us.
This video is supported by the Australian Government through the funding from the Natural Heritage Trust under the Climate Smart Agricultural Program.